Every rewatch makes her worse. Sheena Shea isn't misunderstood. She's proof that emotional growth on reality TV is optional. Few figures in the Vanderpump Rules universe have managed to generate such visceral second-hand embarrassment as Sheena Shea. Across 11 seasons of public meltdowns, misguided alliances, and tone-deaf declarations of self-importance, Sheena has performed a masterclass in arrested development, proving that emotional growth is apparently optional, even when life throws every opportunity for it her way. Her track record reads like a cautionary tale of how not to evolve on reality television. From the early days of mishandling her first husband's addiction to the more recent chaos of her marriage to Brock, Sheena has maintained a level of narcissistic self-involvement that borders on performance art. Each time she seems poised for redemption, perhaps learning something, by the end of season 11, she's plumbing new depths, managing to alienate audiences who once rooted for her underdog narrative. It's not that Sheena doesn't change, it's that she transforms without ever maturing. She's endured more real-life upheaval than most of her castmates: divorce, miscarriage, marriage, motherhood, yet somehow exhibits less self-awareness than the rest combined. Tom Sandoval may hold the crown for moral bankruptcy, but Sheena is perpetually snapping at his heels. Her behavior isn't born of ignorance or impulsivity, it's chillingly deliberate. The faux ditzy persona serves only as insulation, a way to claim victimhood whenever accountability looms. Season 11 in particular exposes the full extent of her delusion, declaring that Sandoval was more upset about losing her as a friend than about— and her boast that all the men in this group have flirted with me, delivered in front of Ariana and Katie, showcased the breathtaking audacity of a woman who can't discern the line between confidence and humiliation. Even her constant references to past sexual escapades, now more frequent than ever, strike a bizarre note for a married mother supposedly focused on stability. In light of Brock's rumored infidelity, her fixation begins to feel less like nostalgia and more like vengeance, an attempt to wound him through the public recounting of her own history. In the early seasons, Sheena might have inspired sympathy, the naive girl desperate for approval amid mean girl chaos. But by now, any trace of innocence has curdled into self-parody. The smile has grown eerily strained, the eyes sharper, the need for validation more consuming. She is a woman utterly— every rewatch only amplifies the horror. The manipulation masked as sincerity, the endless quest for victimhood, the performative self-pity. Sheena Shea isn't just unlikable, she's a tragic study in emotional stagnation. And the real twist? For all her talk of being misunderstood, she may be the most accurately understood person in the entire cast. Forget Sandoval, the real villain of Vanderpump Rules was hiding behind a puppy dog grin the whole time. Tom Schwartz has made a career out of pretending to be harmless. The bumbling, apologetic, nice guy persona is his greatest performance, one that conveniently conceals an arsenal of emotional manipulation and quiet malice. He is the kind of man who weaponizes incompetence, cloaking contempt and confusion, cruelty and charm. Behind the bashful smiles and Bubba baby talk lies a partner who has consistently humiliated, undermined, and psychologically exhausted the women around him. The infamous ring-on-a-string stunt remains his magnum opus of cowardice. This wasn't a clueless misstep. It was a deliberate act of sabotage. Schwartz knew Katie despised the idea, yet he did it anyway, banking on the hope that she'd end the relationship so he wouldn't have to. How convenient to play the forgetful fool while forcing his partner to look like the unreasonable one. Poor Schwartz, after all, only tried to give his fiancée jewelry. The same pattern infects nearly every milestone of their relationship, including the wedding he so theatrically despised. He whined about every detail, refused to contribute financially, and mocked the entire process with performative detachment. Katie even offered cheaper options, yet he declined, because failure was the goal. Why bother building a marriage when you can lazily dismantle it and play the victim? Schwartz's everyday cruelty came disguised as teasing. His patronizing, "See, Bubba, isn't it fun when we don't?" wasn't an attempt at peace, It was psychological warfare with a smile. Every sweet pet name was a leash, designed to pull her back into submission after his latest humiliation. His trademark baby-voiced apologies, later recycled with Lala and Joe, show his emotional vocabulary never evolved beyond manipulative regression. Then there are the physical displays of disdain, dumping a drink on Katie's head in Mexico, throwing another at Stassi, and acting violently out of nowhere in earlier seasons. His so-called gentle temperament crumbles the moment a woman challenges him. It's no coincidence that his deepest emotional displays were reserved for Sandoval, not his wife. Schwartz's tenderness only seems to activate around the men whose approval he craves. Perhaps the most revealing moment came when he lost their marriage certificate. Twice. The first time might be clumsy. The second? Confession by behavior. How can you expect me not to lose them? He shrugged, translating roughly to, I never cared enough to keep them. Schwartz's cruelty extends far beyond Katie. He has humiliated women publicly, refused to defend them when attacked by his friends, and mimicked his manipulative Bubba routine on every subsequent target. His dynamic with Rachella, agreeing to walk her down the aisle in Mexico purely to antagonize Katie, was a small but telling moment of pure spite. Even his accidental antics at dinners and group events often reek of calculated insolence, like the time he inserted himself into Katie's meal after his public makeout with Rachel, smiling through her visible disgust. This isn't the story of a clueless romantic. It's the anatomy of a coward who hides behind charm to justify his cruelty. Schwartz's true motivation was never love, but optics. He wanted the image of success, the pretty wife, the stable relationship, without the labor, empathy, or integrity. And when the mask slips, when the performance falters, he defaults to baby talk and confusion, letting the world rush to defend him once again. Tom Schwartz isn't the nice guy who means well. He's the archetype of the quiet manipulator, the man who feigns helplessness to avoid accountability, whose greatest trick is convincing everyone, including himself, that he's incapable of harm. The truth is far less cute. Beneath the bashful grin lies something colder, a man who knows exactly what he's doing. Lala Kent didn't just unfollow her friends, she turned her Instagram feed into a scoreboard for who she thinks is beneath her. There's a certain art to modern warfare, and Lala Kent appears to have chosen the Instagram unfollow as her weapon of choice. Once upon a time, friendships dissolved through words or deeds. Now, it's the quiet click of unfollow that delivers the fatal blow. Lala, ever the self-proclaimed boss babe, has apparently pruned her following list to a lean 218, a number that seems to serve more as a vanity project than a reflection of her social circle. The unfollowees? Not obscure acquaintances or PR interns, but her supposed friends and co-stars Ariana Madix and Katie Maloney. Both still follow her, of course, because maturity, unlike follower counts, can't be curated. This isn't Lala's first foray into social media pettiness. She made headlines announcing her unfollow of Shiana Shea, a move so performative it could have used its own press release. Her explanation? A bizarre commitment to maintaining an even number of people she follows. A touching display of numerological devotion, if only it didn't reek of thinly veiled disdain. Let's be clear, anyone can have arbitrary Instagram rules. But when one's even number conveniently excludes a longtime friend and professional collaborator, while somehow sparing Tom Schwartz, Kristen Doute, and Stassi Schroeder, the math starts looking suspiciously emotional. There are only so many random boutique shops and eyebrow techs one can pretend to prioritize before it becomes obvious. The unfollow button is less about order and more about ego. Lala's digital diplomacy has long been transparent. After the Season 11 reunion, she justified her social media purge with her trademark mix of self-importance and implausible logic. Yet the subtext was simple. She doesn't like them, and Instagram is her battleground. Katie, ever the adult in the room, dismissed the stunt with refreshing bluntness. She wasn't about to act like a child over a button. Perhaps that's the real issue here. In her world, digital optics are everything. Because nothing says growth quite like making sure your ratio of followers to followings reflects just how superior you'd like everyone to think you are. They called it commitment, but what Shiana went through after childbirth looked a lot more like self-punishment. Shiana Shea's postpartum period was a masterclass in misplaced pressure, self-imposed, socially reinforced, and televised for maximum scrutiny. For someone often dismissed as vain or performative, her early months of motherhood revealed something more poignant. A woman drowning under the weight of unrealistic expectations and spanks. Barely weeks after childbirth, she was visibly struggling, yet still determined to appear camera-ready in clothes that looked more like contraptions than comfort. Every outfit seemed engineered for optics, not recovery. The desperation to maintain a pre-baby figure, or perhaps to keep pace with Lala's swift bounce back, was almost painful to watch. Instead of giving herself grace, Sheena appeared locked in a silent competition, one her body wasn't ready to participate in. The tragedy lies not only in the aesthetic strain, but in the emotional aftermath. By her own account, Sheena battled postpartum depression and OCD, described in her book with surprising candor, if not literary grace. She also nearly died giving birth, a fact often dismissed as another Sheena exaggeration, until the physical and psychological toll became impossible to ignore. Filming a reality show amid that chaos would test anyone's sanity, but Sheena's insistence on performance, the smiling, the dieting, the tight dresses, felt like self-punishment disguised as professionalism. One of her most vulnerable moments came during the hot tub scene at Lala's house, when she refused to wear a bathing suit. She blamed doctor's orders, but the real subtext was obvious. She couldn't bear the comparison. Watching that hesitation unfold, amid a cast that treats postpartum insecurity like an inconvenience, was quietly heartbreaking. Even as she rapidly lost weight in the months that followed, it was hard not to wonder what that victory cost her behind the scenes. Between breastfeeding, exhaustion, and the unrelenting glare of reality TV, Shiana's postpartum experience became a cruel balancing act between survival and self-image. For once, the woman known for oversharing seemed painfully human, just one more new mother, punished by the mirror, the camera, and her own expectations. They weren't drunk, they were high. Here's the part of Vanderpump Rules Bravo never wanted you to notice. If Vanderpump Rules were ever reclassified from reality television to pharmaceutical documentary, few would object. Nearly every major cast member has, at one point, appeared to substitute emotional regulation with chemical experimentation, and the results were televised in high definition. The early seasons were practically sponsored by stimulants and vodka tonics. Jax Taylor, the poster child for self-destruction, rarely disguised his coke-fueled bravado, while his loyal understudy, James Kennedy, followed the same white-powdered path with eager ambition. Tom Schwartz, eternally slumped over a bar, offered the gentler face of dependency, less manic than Jax, more numb than James, but no less consumed by it. His perpetual haze suggested that alcohol was less a social lubricant and more a lifestyle choice. Sandoval, meanwhile, seemed to approach drug use with the same theatrical enthusiasm he brings to everything else. His open discussions of weed and mushrooms were almost— Ariana, for her part, was caught in the same orbit. Her birthday episode alone could serve as a museum exhibit titled Molly and the Mirage of Self-Discovery. Among the women, Adderall reigned supreme. Stassi openly admitted that much of the cast relied on it to drink more, sleep less, and stay camera-ready. Sheena, ever the enigma, rarely appeared intoxicated but radiated the jittery composure of someone whose chemistry wasn't entirely organic. Rumors once floated about clouds of marijuana smoke wafting from her apartment, hardly scandalous, though amusingly on-brand for someone so perpetually anxious. Kristen Doute's erratic behavior sparked the most speculation. Her volatility was so pronounced that whispers painted her not only as a user, but as the group's alleged supplier, a role she played with unnerving commitment if true. Katie, Lala, and Brittany. Over time, some members graduated from chaos to clarity. Lala found sobriety, Stassi grew up, if not out, and Ariana attempted balance, though the men predictably lagged behind. Schwartz still clings to his drinks, Jax remains allergic to accountability, and Sandoval continues performing the role of deep artist while reeking of last night's hangover. In short, the cast of Vanderpump Rules built a cultural empire on a foundation of stimulants, booze, and denial. The drugs may have faded, but the damage, and the delusion, remain delightfully intact. Randall didn't join Vanderpump Rules to support Lala. He joined to save himself. Randall Emmett's sudden emergence on Vanderpump Rules in Season 8 was less of a cameo and more of a cautionary tale in unchecked ego. After years of Lala Kent swearing that her mysterious... For someone who had supposedly insisted on privacy, Randall's abrupt comfort with a camera crew reeked less of spontaneity and more of strategic self-promotion. The shift likely had less to do with romance and more to do with reputation, and perhaps revenue. Around this time, the now infamous Money by Monday fiasco with 50 Cent had already begun to erode whatever Hollywood credibility he had. Once a behind-the-scenes producer name few could place, Randall suddenly realized that Bravo fame, however messy, might be a faster route to public relevance. What better way to counter a humiliating debt scandal than by cozying up to a network that thrives on turning dysfunction into airtime? Of course, the cast's tone shift didn't go unnoticed. Before his appearance, most of them were openly skeptical, if not dismissive, of Lala's elusive man. Yet once cameras started rolling, their opinions softened at suspicious speed. It doesn't take a producer's mind to see the transactional symmetry, a few kind words in exchange for the promise of airtime or favor. Randall got his makeover, a curated image of success and charm, and the show got another character to fold into its ever-expanding reality circus. Ironically, the very attention he craved became his undoing. Like every Bravo cautionary tale before him, Jen Shah, the Judices, and the long list of self-anointed moguls who mistook fame for immunity, Randall learned that visibility cuts both ways. What starts as image control quickly turns into exposure, and for men who've built their careers on illusion, the camera's glare can be devastating. In the end, his Season 8 debut wasn't a surprise cameo, it was a symptom. A man who'd spent years behind the curtain finally stepped into the spotlight, only to discover that once you invite the public in, they never leave quietly. The first time you watch, the second time, you realize no one deserves your support. Revisiting Vanderpump Rules from the beginning offers a rare gift, hindsight. With years of chaos, scandals, and emotional decay now in full view, the once beloved personalities of SUR reveal themselves in far less flattering light. What was once a parade of charismatic dysfunction now reads more like a cautionary tale of arrested development and selective accountability. Ariana Madix, the frozen smile of superiority. Few characters benefit less from a rewatch than Ariana. Her early seasons are an exercise in smug detachment, arrogant, humorless, and perpetually bored by the very people who fund her paycheck. The self-proclaimed voice of reason is, in practice, a cocktail of condescension and emotional vacancy. She spent years insisting she was above it all, yet never managed to rise above the show itself. Her modern-day glow-up and post-Sandoval renaissance may have rehabilitated her public image, but make no mistake, Seasons 2 through 4 are an unbroken string of eye rolls and superiority complexes. The only thing more exhausting than her misery was her insistence that it made her interesting. Sheena Shea, the human roller coaster of relatability. Shiana, perpetually stuck between endearing and insufferable, remains one of the few cast members whose flaws feel genuinely human. Her wedding was a fever dream of performative romance, her self-awareness intermittent at best. But at least her delusions came from a place of sincerity. Her downfall seemed to coincide with her divorce, when earnest vulnerability gave way to chronic overcompensation. Yet she endures, mostly because she tries. In a cast, Stassi Schroeder, the decline of the queen bee, once hailed as sharp, funny, and commanding, Stassi's rewatch arc doesn't age nearly as well as her contouring skills. The confidence that once read as power now lands as cruelty wrapped in punchlines. Behind every smart remark lies the smug assurance that meanness equals strength. Time has not softened her edges. It's simply revealed that there wasn't much underneath the wit except ego and entitlement. Katie Maloney. The Unexpected Redemption Arc. Katie's evolution is the most surprising of all. Initially written off as the moody sidekick to her toxic partner, she now emerges as the lone voice of grounded reality. Her slow-burn resentment toward Schwartz, once portrayed as nagging, reads as long-suppressed clarity upon rewatch. Her anger suddenly feels earned, her exhaustion justified. Watching her tolerate years of passive-aggressive cruelty from a man too cowardly to be cruel outright is maddening. The viewer's impulse to shake her by the shoulders and yell, "You can do better," becomes not frustration, but empathy, and blessedly, she finally does. The supporting cast, a parade of predictable chaos. Some things never change. Lala remains a paradoxical blend of performative empowerment and genuine toxicity. James still mistakes cruelty for comedy. Schwartz continues his charming descent into moral uselessness. Kristen, the eternal chaos agent, remains both deranged and magnetic, proof that self-destruction can be riveting television. And Jax Taylor, of course, is as irredeemable as ever, a man so allergic to growth, he's practically fossilized. The Sandoval effect, revisionist sympathy and selective outrage. Modern audiences often rewrite history to fit current loyalties, but the pre-Sandoval Ariana was far from universally adored. Her disdain for the group, and the show itself, was palpable. She wasn't wronged perfection. She was a deeply unhappy woman in a relationship long past expiration, now catapulted into sainthood by the world's collective rage at Tom Sandoval's sleaze. Yes, her reaction at the reunion was brutal. Yes, the timing was raw. But no, it doesn't erase years of her being insufferably above it all. In the end, perspective is the real plot twist. The rewatch reminds us that time, distance, and scandal have distorted our perception of who's good and bad on Vanderpump Rules. With hindsight, the villains are more pathetic than evil, the heroes more flawed than admirable. The only true constant? Every one of them is exactly as delusional as fame requires them to be. Nothing screams success like spending your mom's retirement money on your mistress's fake engagement. On rewatch, Tom Sandoval's grand performance surrounding Rachella, his supposed financial and creative triumph, reveals itself for what it truly was: a carefully staged illusion built on lies, borrowed money, and bravado. The self-congratulatory declarations of his vision, his money, crumble under the weight of a rather inconvenient truth. None of it was actually his. While Sandoval puffed up his chest about footing the bill, the funds allegedly came not from business acumen or hard-earned savings, but from his mother's retirement account. The irony is thick. The man playing the magnanimous success story was, in reality, siphoning off family resources to fuel his vanity project. Meanwhile, James Kennedy, often vilified for his volatility, was busy supporting abusive parents. A grim contrast. Sandoval's supposed gesture toward James and Raquel, or Rachel, depending on which reinvention she's using, was rooted in payback for old grievances involving Kristen Dutte. The Rachella spectacle. Sandoval's kindness exists only when it serves him, his relationships mere mirrors reflecting his own importance. Nowhere is this clearer than in the mortgage scheme. He attempted to con Schwartz into paying half his home loan each month while keeping full ownership of the property. It wasn't just selfish. It bordered on financial exploitation, the kind one might expect from a sociopath masquerading as a friend. But Sandoval's lowest act, astonishingly, wasn't against his business partner. It was against Ariana Madix. While maintaining a relationship with her, he used their shared funds to bankroll Raquel's engagement celebration, all while cultivating at least an emotional affair with the same woman. That isn't mere betrayal, it's financial and emotional parasitism. And then there's his mother, complicit, or at best, indifferent. Hosting Rachel in the home once shared with Ariana speaks volumes about the moral rot running through the family tree. Sympathy for her evaporates quickly when one realizes she not only tolerated, but enabled her son's cruelty. Tom Sandoval built his empire of ego on other people's labor, money, and dignity. Behind the sequins, guitars, and empty affirmations lies a man with no loyalty, no self-awareness, and no genuine success to speak of. Just an endless loop of manipulation packaged as ambition.